not the full picture. It's just the matter. Where's the essence, the form? Now,
there is no essence or form. That's my point. There is no essence or form. You have utterly failed to point to anything that counts as essence or form.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. So glad you're here for this one. Today we've got Matt Dillahunty sitting across from Dr. Kenny Rhodes, and the whole clash comes down to one tiny word that Kenny builds his entire case on: essence. He says everything from a dodo bird to a human being has some hidden inner nature, and that nature points straight to a designer who put it there. Matt's reply is brutally simple: just show me where that essence actually is, and watch what happens when he can't. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the back half, because the moment the statue analogy comes out, the whole argument tips over in a way you have to see for yourself. And before we get rolling, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far this little community reaches. All right, let's get into it.
I'd love a definition of the essence. I'd love a definition of the essence. That's like the first thing I wrote down when you were talking is what exactly do you mean by essence? Because you, and I'm not meaning this insulting in any way. This is what I meant when I said we're going to use language in a different way, because you're talking about, oh, there's an essence of existence. I have no idea what that is, and I haven't yet got a description of it now, other than it seems to be some ineffable, it's the thing that makes humans human. It's the thing that makes existent things exist. Well, those are both tautologies that don't add anything edifying at all.
Okay, I might not be communicating this because I'm not saying there's an essence of existence. I'm saying that what makes a dodo bird, we define things by their essences. That is what we do. A definition is a description of what a thing is. That a thing is also distinct.
Like if you ask three people to define a dodo bird, what would they say that you think is essence? You want to look at the definition, how we define a particular thing. We define them according to their essence or their nature. That is distinct. I know you just said that, but I'm asking for some kind of example, because you've said that twice now, and I still don't know what it means.
Well, just because people will ignorantly give different definitions of a thing doesn't make the fact that we have defined something like this, and we define it, I don't mean to repeat myself, by what it is. Like the dictionary definition of what a human being is.
Okay, so first of all, dictionaries aren't prescriptive. Dictionaries aren't prescriptive; they're descriptive. Language we use, and dictionaries just describe how we use language. But if you, like, for example, I can pull up on Wikipedia. The dodo is an extinct flightless bird that was endemic to the island of Mauritius, east of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. The dodo's closest genetic relative was also extinct, Rodriguez solitaire. What they're doing here when they're defining dodo is describing things about it. It's not a complete definition, but what about that is essence? And how would we know the essence of a dodo versus the essence of something else?
It's what a thing is.
I
guess what's a human being?
Well, there's a number of different
usages. A rational animal, let's just say that, rational animal.
Why would I define human being as a rational animal? Do you not think there are other potentially rational animals that aren't human?
Well, that is the standard definition of a human being, is a rational animal. That's all.
That's one description of a human being, but I would argue that there are other primates and dolphins and others that would count as rational animals that are. Well,
that's kind of irrelevant to what I'm trying to say. I mean, when we define it, we're defining it from what it is. We may not have a complete definition of something, but that doesn't negate the fact that there is there's a nature of something.
No, that you're saying the description is the description. The fact that you're describing something doesn't mean that what it is some sort of essence that needs an explanation. Please, so like, for example, when we define dodo, it's an extinct flightless bird. Let's ignore the extinct thing and pretend like it was still here because we were describing it. Okay, what does it mean to say flightless bird? Well, those are words that we use that have particular usages about the type of animal we're talking about and what its capabilities are. But that doesn't mean that that's the essence of a dodo.
This is the exact moment a debate stops being a debate and becomes a man refusing to define his own word. Matt asks one simple thing: what do you actually mean by essence? And Dr. Kenny Rhodes cannot land the plane. He just keeps circling the same runway. And Matt nails why it's empty when he points out that those answers are tautologies that add nothing edifying. You have to understand what that means, because it's the whole game right here. When Kenny says essence is the thing that makes humans human, he thinks he's explaining something. He isn't. He's saying a thing is the thing that makes it the thing it is. That's a hamster wheel dressed up as a definition. And here's the part people don't realize. Kenny keeps insisting we define things by their essences, that a definition is a description of what a thing is. Okay, then show me. Matt does the most devastating thing you can do to a vague claim. He asks for one example, and Kenny can't produce one that survives contact. Then Matt drops a line that should be taught in every classroom. Dictionaries aren't prescriptive, they're descriptive. Let me break down why that's so lethal. A dictionary doesn't hand down truth from on high about what a word secretly is. It watches how humans actually use a word and writes that down. So when Kenny treats a definition like he's pulling back a curtain on some hidden metaphysical core, he's got the whole thing backwards. The word follows the usage. The usage does not follow some invisible essence floating behind it. And the dodo moment is the cherry on top. Matt asks what about any of that description is essence, and how we would even know the essence of a dodo versus the essence of anything else. Kenny has no answer, because there isn't one to give.
I really think you're not getting what I'm saying.
I know I'm not.
This is standard philosophical truth. This is not something I'm making up whatsoever. We define things by what they are, their essence. We don't have a complete explanation. The scientific method, we go out and we examine things and we look at their characteristics and their properties and we put a definition to it. I mean, that's the way reality is all about. We define things. What makes me different from you and what makes a human being different from, a rock is what it is. Its nature, its essence, what it is.
I agree that what makes me different from you and both of us different from a rock gets down to what we are. But I don't see anything that you can point to that qualifies as essence. These are all physical aspects of each of us. The things that are different between me and you and between the rock are all physical things that we can describe and identify and detect. Where in that is essence? It's not a thing. It's not
what it is.
An explanation.
It's what it is.
Essence is our packaged description of those qualities, not the qualities.
A nature is what we look at, and then we define what that thing is, put down the definition. I think we're going down a rabbit hole here. What I am saying is that because that is distinct, because what a thing is and that a thing is distinct. I know essentialism is something that most atheists, a lot of thinkers today think is not a part of reality, very reductionistic these days. We even with evolutionary theory, they define things, in a way I think is cladistics. I think is fallacious from the beginning, because it defines something by what it's made of, eukaryotic, for example, and say that we all share in that. But the principle is the same: the unity and the diversity, and the fact that when we are looking for, we're looking for the explanation of ourselves. We know that we are composed of parts. There must be one who has put those parts together. That is the core of my argument.
Okay.
Which is based on the laws of logic.
So first of all, you just seem to suggest, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this right, that you're opposed to scientific classification of creatures by their biological facts.
I think that cladistics is not the full answer. That I just, by way of
well, I mean, at least with cladistics, we are pointing, at least the science, they're pointing to specific, detectable, identifiable properties. And yet you're willing to point to other properties and call them essence.
Now watch Matt close the trap. He grants the obvious, that he's different from Kenny, and that both of them are different from a rock. Nobody is denying difference exists, but then he asks the only question that matters. Every single difference you can point to is physical. It's something we can describe, identify, and detect. So where in any of that is this essence? And Kenny's reply should have ended it for him. He says essence is our packaged description of those qualities, not the qualities themselves. Stop, did you catch that? He just admitted essence isn't a real thing sitting out in the world. It's a label we put on a bundle of physical traits. That is Matt's entire point, handed back to him by the man arguing against it. Here's some context that makes this richer. Essentialism isn't some idea Kenny cooked up. It goes all the way back to Aristotle, who argued that things carry a fixed inner nature that makes them what they are. For centuries, that was simply how educated people understood reality. The reason it lost ground wasn't atheist bias. It's that once biology started examining living things up close, those neat little boxes stopped holding. And Kenny basically concedes the modern picture when he admits essentialism is something most thinkers today don't treat as part of reality. He says it like it's a tragedy. I'd call it progress. And this is the part that blows my mind. Matt points out that scientific classification at least gestures at specific, detectable, identifiable properties, and yet Kenny wants to wave at other properties and call them essence. You don't get to mock measurable categories and then quietly smuggle in an invisible one.
What I'm saying is that
how is your
I don't wanna get bogged
eucharisticness?
down on this,
How is whether or not something is eucharistic not a part of its nature?
because it's what it's made of. It's its matter, not its form.
So whether or not something is eucharistic is not its nature, but
It's its.
but
There's
the
a
thing
distinction
that you
between
can't
matter and form
describe
as
that
well.
makes me is my nature. But eucharistic is definitely not it.
That's what we're made of, right? That's matter. That's like trying to define a house by saying it's wood and then saying it shares a common ancestor with the bench. I don't want to get into evolution at all, but I was just trying to point out by way of illustration that the loss of the concept of essences has put a lot of what passes today committing some logical fallacies by not understanding that there is a true essence and form behind what is. In order to have any kind of continuity through time, there must be that which is existing and identifying what a thing is through time. Now, time happens to be part of our nature as we are temporal beings, but I'm trying to simply illustrate by way of other information that essences are real. That's how we define things. We don't define things by what they're made of.
Sure, we do.
Define
We
things
do it
by
all
what
the time. We do it. We do it all the time. And a eukaryote is just an organism whose cells have a nucleus. So why is it a problem to say that the nature of eukaryotic cells is that they have a nucleus?
That might be part of what they are, as in part of what a human being is that we are made of bone and skin and blood. It's part of it. But there's also that immaterial aspect, that form. For example, if I'm going to make a statue, whether I do it by the negation of the material there, or if I put it in some sort of form and pour metal in there, I am necessarily putting a form to that matter. I'm making a matter form composition. That requires a composer, one who is putting that matter form together. If we chisel out a statue, necessarily I am bringing form to that statue. What I'm saying is that looking at what something is made of is not the full picture. It's just the matter. Where's the essence, the form? Now, there
is no essence or form. That's my point. There is no essence or form. You have utterly failed to point to anything that counts as essence or form.
And then comes the swing that should have ended the whole night. Kenny attacks scientific classification, complaining that it's wrong to define a thing by what it's made of. So Matt just turns it around on him. He asks, a eukaryote is simply an organism with a nucleus, so why is it a problem to say the nature of those cells is exactly that, having a nucleus? And Kenny has nowhere to stand. So he reaches for the immaterial. He says there's that immaterial aspect, that form. Watch the pattern. Every time you pin him to something physical and testable, he takes one more step back into something you cannot see, cannot measure, and very conveniently cannot disprove. Then he goes all in. Kenny says when he shapes a statue, he's making a matter form composition that requires a composer, someone putting the matter and form together. And that is the tell. This was never really about dodos or eukaryotes. The whole essence conversation was a runway built to reach one destination, a cosmic composer. He needs essence to be real and immaterial so he can claim someone had to place it there. Pull that one brick out and the entire structure comes down, which is precisely what happens. Matt doesn't flinch. He says it flat out, there is no essence, there is no form, and Kenny has utterly failed to point to anything that counts as either. And here's what I want you to sit with. For the whole exchange, one side kept asking for a single concrete example, and the other side kept describing, redefining, and retreating, and never once delivered. When your entire argument depends on a thing existing, and you spend 10 minutes unable to show that the thing exists, you didn't lose on style. You lost on substance. What I respect most is that Matt never reached for an insult. He just kept asking the same fair question until the silence answered it for him. The most powerful weapon in any debate was never volume. It's a question your opponent genuinely cannot answer. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.